Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 2 to 5 player game Here Lies, designed by Jasper Beatrix, Jacob Meyer, and Bobby West, and published by DVC Games, who helped sponsor this video. The world's greatest detectives have assembled, and you're one of them. Here, each game will present a mysterious case you'll work together to solve. One player takes on the role of the lead investigator, who secretly learns all the details of the case, while the other players ask them questions to uncover the truth. But the questions they ask, and the answers they get, will likely be unusual and creative. Here Lies comes with 25 unique and varied cases. The solution to a particular case will always be the same, but how you arrive at the solution can change dramatically with each play. So even if you know the answers from playing a case, you can still take it to a new group and run it for them as the lead investigator of their game to see if and how they solve the case. I've personally run the first case in this box about 10 times already, and I'd do it again. Now, to avoid spoiling the cases in the game, I have an extra one from the publisher that's not included in the box, which I'll use as I teach the rules, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. So if you're ready to get started, pick one person at the table to be your lead investigator. And if you're learning the rules for your group, it should probably be you. Everyone else will be a regular investigator. And with that sorted, join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, each regular investigator player, which are just known as the investigators in the game, picks a character and takes the related deck, which comes with a single character and 10 inquiry cards. On one of its sides, each character card shows a unique symbol in the area here, and its related inquiry cards will have the same symbol. When a deck is collected, each investigator puts their character in front of themselves with its unique symbol side face down. Then they shuffle their related inquiry cards, putting them under their character after. Next, using this chart found in the rulebook and on screen, each investigator draws a number of inquiry cards from their deck based on the number of investigators in the game. So do not count the lead investigator. In this video, we'll assume we have 3 players, a lead investigator and 2 investigators. So each investigator would draw 6 cards. When drawing, I like to take from the bottom of the deck like this because you never draw your character card. This must always stay on top. And the cards you draw are not private, so keep them face up on the table for everyone to see. These cards are double-sided, so you can examine either side, but I find it helpful to keep the side with a number at the top here face up. Here we have our 2 investigators with their drawn inquiry cards. If you have a game with only 1 investigator, they'll also use 2 character decks and draw 6 cards from each. Now the lead investigator picks one of the leftover characters. They set it in front of themselves with the symbol side face up. However, they will not use the related inquiry cards. So those, along with any other unchosen character decks, are returned to the box. Why players might pick one character over another will make more sense once we know more of the rules, but you can also feel free to assign them randomly. The lead investigator also collects these smaller cards with a title at the top, known as the categories, along with these red, yellow, and green guest tokens and a dry erase marker. Now put this play mat in the center of the play area with these time tokens and the name, year, and key evidence cards nearby. These are the ally cards as shown by their label at the top, and you keep these in a deck nearby along with these blank mini cards. Now the lead investigator collects this case book and chooses one of the cases from it for your group to solve. Remember, we're going to use a case that's available online, but you can work through the cases in this book as a campaign, solving them in order and earning upgrades that you carry through to future cases. The first 3 cases in this book are simpler tutorials which can be helpful when you're first learning the game. And although I'm going to teach you all of the rules here, I still recommend playing the tutorial cases just for the fun of it. Either way, only the lead investigator can look at the case you're going to play. and these all follow a similar two-page format. To begin, the lead investigator takes note of the name of the person who died and the year when the case occurred, as shown in the top left. Using their dry erase marker, they record that name and year on this card and place it by the information area of the playmat where everyone can see it. Next, the lead investigator examines the bold, all-caps text on the right page of the case. Each of them represent categories. In the tutorial cases, you may have fewer of them, but otherwise you'll always have 6. Find those categories among these category cards, as I've already done, and arrange them by the Roman numerals on the playmat, starting here and going this way, putting them in the same order they were listed in the case, so it looks like this when you're done. All the leftover categories you can just set aside for now. Next, the lead investigator checks this area of the case, which tells them how much time the investigators will have each round. In this case, 7 time. They then put that number of time tokens on this area of the mat. The rest can be returned to the box. After, the lead investigator announces how many rounds the players will have to solve the case, as shown here, so 3 rounds. Then privately, the lead investigator reads the case details as shown on the right page. Under each category will be a sentence related to that part of the case, and within each sentence is an underlined word or short phrase known as the correct answer for that category. During the game, the lead investigator is never allowed to directly say or give the investigators the correct answers related to the categories. Instead, through questions the investigators ask, the lead investigator will try to help the other players figure out the correct answers for themselves. In this way, the game is fully cooperative. The lead investigator wants the case to be solved and will do everything they can to help. But since they cannot directly give the answers, the players will have to use other clever methods to solve the case, as we'll see. Once the lead investigator has privately read the right-hand page, they'll know the full story of the case, as well as how each of the categories connect to one another and how the subject of the case died. And I should point out, while the case will involve trying to determine the events surrounding someone's death, that doesn't mean they were murdered, or that they were a victim. It could have been an accident, something medical, a bear attack, or any number of things. But yes, also, it could have been murder. Now the lead investigator reads the italicized case introduction on the left page out loud to the players, along with any bold text special rules. This will give the players a little narrative text, and sometimes it will also contain some clues. But sometimes it does not contain any clues. That said, the players can ask to have it reread any number of times. And also be aware, during the game, players can write any notes they want about the case. Notes can be kept any way you want, but you will not use all of these key evidence cards, and any you don't need for the case can be flipped and used to record notes on. You can actually write on every card in the game with the dry erase marker, and they can all be wiped off after. Just don't write on the cloth. The ink will not come out of that. And that's the setup. In Here Lies, the investigators will use their cards to ask the lead investigator about the case. As we saw, each category related to the case has an underlined word or words that are the correct answer to that category. For example, in the case that we set up, one of the categories is foe's identity, and the lead investigator knows the correct answer is king. Another category is plan, and the correct answer is poison. The investigators only need to figure out the underlined words, but the sentences tell the whole story. So I suggest that you pause here and read this case for yourself. Knowing the whole story will help the lead investigator give better clues. And as the investigators get information, they'll discuss out loud what they think the clues mean. And at different points in the game, they'll learn if they're getting closer to the correct answers. At the end of the game, or any time before then, if a player says all the correct answers in the order found on the categories, the lead investigator stops the game and everyone wins. The game is played over a series of rounds, and each round is broken into 3 phases, starting with the discovery phase. Here, the lead investigator looks at the key evidence area on the left page, where they'll see 2 options for the current round. We're in round 1, so they see freshly picked herbs and many guards. they now pick one of those to offer as a clue about the case. If I was the lead investigator, I know chef and poison are two of the underlined correct answers. So I think freshly picked herbs goes well with those as a clue. After the lead investigator makes their choice, they write it on a key evidence card and place it for all the players to see by the key evidence area of the playmat. In this way, at the start of each round, the investigators will get a new piece of key evidence chosen by the lead investigator from the options the case provides. After, it's time for the inquiry phase. Here, the investigators will look at both sides of the cards in front of themselves. Each card will provide a way to ask the lead investigator a question about the case. There is no turn order in this phase. Anyone can propose a card to play, and the same person can play several in a row, but everyone should work together to discuss which cards might be the most useful. And a card should only be played when there is a general agreement from the table to use it. And don't be discouraged if you have some cards that are not very useful right now. They could become very useful later. Also notice every inquiry card has a time cost found at its top, ranging from 1 to 3. Once players decide on a card to use, they first spend its time cost by moving that number of time tokens from the playmat to the table. If players cannot pay the cost, they cannot play the card. The inquiry cards come in many different styles, so I think showing you a few examples will help you understand how they can work. Let's pretend the investigators chose to play this one. It says the lead investigator adds up to 3 words to the body diagram chosen from the back of this card. Many cards won't make complete sense unless you look at their backs, and remember, you can always examine both sides. Here we see all sorts of materials, and again, the lead investigator chooses any 3 to add to the body diagram. When the game refers to the body diagram, it means the skeleton on the playmat. When an inquiry does not specify how words should be added to the mat, the lead investigator uses either side of these blank mini cards. And if they run out when they would need more, you can flip over any unused category cards and use those instead. When resolving this card's effect, as the lead investigator, I could write up to 3 of these words on mini cards, but I only felt strongly about 2 of them, so I've chosen metal and plant. The inquiry will always tell you who gets to place the clues, and in this case, the lead investigator does. So I think I'll make use of this arrow to position metal so it's pointing at the body's neck, and add plant so it's pointing towards a hand. I'm hoping that as they get more clues, the plant pointing to the hand will help them discover that the chef gathered poisonous herbs, and then the metal at the neck might lead them to realize he was later beheaded. The lead investigator must follow the instructions on an inquiry card as they're written, including where they can place cards. But after, the rest of the investigators are free to move any of the cards around on the table as they like. I might not want them to, but I can't stop them. The only thing you cannot freely move around are the categories. Let's look at another example and assume this inquiry was played. It costs 2 time and then says that the lead investigator invents an adjective to describe what the subject was like when they were killed or found, writing it on the back of this card and then circling the correct label. Remember, at no time can the lead investigator write or draw a picture of an underlined word from the case, unless the inquiry card says otherwise. This means in our current example, we would not write hateful or beheaded as an adjective for the subject, as those are underlined words. You also have to avoid clues that are close but not quite the same as the underlined words. So I should probably not use headless as an adjective, since beheaded is one of the underlined words. The purpose of the clues you share is to give the investigators something to solve, not to solve the case for them. So just use your discretion. This is also why the instructions say to invent an adjective. That doesn't mean you literally invent a new word that doesn't exist, but instead come up with a clue that creatively relates to the case, even if it's not directly in the case's story. I might be comfortable using the word guilty as the clue here, since the subject did try to kill the king, and I might imagine that they felt guilty later. Or I might write justified, because I think the subject felt they had a righteous cause. And by the way, when the game refers to the subject, It means the person who died. After writing my adjective, I then circle the related context. In this case, the subject was feeling justified at the time they were killed. The final instruction here tells us that the investigator places it, not the lead investigator. So as the lead investigator, I would pass this card back to the person it originally came from, and they decide where on the table to put it, which is different from the previous inquiry card we saw, where the lead investigator was told to place the clues. Sometimes an inquiry card will not be placed at all. Here, the lead investigator can move any cards in play that have drawings, symbols, or images on them and put them anywhere they like. Just keep in mind, you must always know which categories belong to which numbered positions on the mat, so never mix these up. And since this inquiry doesn't tell you to place the card itself, after it's resolved, the investigator who played it discards it by putting it directly under the character card of their deck. We're not going to go through all the inquiry cards in this video, as how they work is printed on them, but I will show you the front and backs of a few so you can pause and read them if you'd like to see more of the creative ways they'll help you gain clues. And don't be surprised if the answers to individual clues don't mean much on their own. As you gain more and more of these clues, you'll draw more connections and begin to see a fuller picture of what happened. During this inquiry phase, it's very important that the investigators engage in lively and active conversation about the clues, and we'll see why that matters in a moment. But basically, if you're thinking something, just say it out loud. It might help the group consider new possibilities. Meanwhile, the lead investigator will mostly be silent, but they can repeat information, clarify how a card can be used, and help the players remember if they have or have not discussed something before. But the lead investigator should not abuse this to insinuate what the players should be thinking about or focused on. And if the investigators spend too much time in conversation, the lead investigator can stop them and ask that they play another card. As long as time tokens remain, inquiries can be played, but if these run out, or if there's not enough of them to pay for any of the cards players still have, or if players just don't want to use any of the inquiry cards they have left, the phase ends and any leftover tokens are lost. Then it's time for the case check phase. Here, the lead investigator places one of these guess tokens on each of the categories. They put a green check mark if at any time they heard the investigators say a category's related underlined word, and synonyms and being really close counts. For example, in our case, the correct answer for the first category is chef. So if anyone had ever said chef, this would get a check mark. As lead investigator, I'd also give it a check mark if they said something like the cook. Now, if players never said anything for a category, or only said incorrect answers, I'd put a red X on it. If investigators are heading in the right direction, but never said a correct or close enough answer, I'd add one of these yellow markers to indicate that they were on the right track. For category 3, if I was the lead investigator and someone had said upset or frustrated, I would place the yellow token there. But if the only feelings they expressed were happy or excited, I'd place a red X. So this is why the investigators need to talk out loud and why the lead investigator always has to be listening. They're trying to hear if the correct answers are being said, but they never react in the moment. We saw that chef is one of the correct answers. So if someone said chef out loud, the lead investigator would not react. They would just wait and then get to put a green check mark on that category during the case check phase. When the investigators see the green check, it just means at some point, someone said the right answer. But they might have said lots of things and might even forget some of the things they said. So in that way, you also don't want to just be shouting out all kinds of possibilities, but do pay attention to what ideas you've come up with and which ones seem to fit the clues you've received so far. Once every category has a token, the case check phase ends, which also ends the current round. You'll find a reminder of all the phases of a round here on the inside of the box lid. And after the end of your first round, you begin the next one. First, put all of the time tokens back on the playmat. Then the lead investigator picks a new piece of key evidence from the options for that round. So, in our example, either of these during round 2. As before, they'll write it on a key evidence card and place it in that area of the playmat. Each investigator may now discard any inquiry cards they're still holding, which they might do if they are not confident that some of them will be useful in the next round. Anytime you discard, just put the cards back in your deck on the opposite side you've been drawing from. Since we've been drawing from the bottom, we put them under the character card. Then, whether you got rid of any cards or not, each investigator redraws until they have the same number of cards that they started the game with. So, with 2 investigators, each should have 6 cards in front of themselves. If this ever causes you to redraw some cards you had previously gotten rid of, that's okay. Remember, during setup, the lead investigator also chose an investigator's character card. And if you're starting the second round, and only during that round's discovery phase, the lead investigator now resolves the ability on their character card. This will provide the investigators with another clue about the case. Then the next round is played just like the first, but we should revisit the case check phase. There are 2 new things to be aware of here. First, when playing the campaign, or from certain effects on inquiry cards, you may gain allies. If so, they come from this deck. No matter how many you have collected, at the start of a case check phase, the investigators may pick a single one to use, and these will provide another way to gain a clue about the case from the lead investigator. You can only use 1 ally per case check phase, and you may not use the same ally more than once during the same case. Also, during this phase, the lead investigator will update the guest tokens on the categories, but they take the entire game into account. In other words, a green check will always stay on a category. It does not matter if the investigators never said the correct answer during the current round. If they had said it at any point during the game, then the category will have gained and kept its check mark. If a category had a red X previously, then based on what was said during the current round, it could now be changed to a yellow or green check. And a yellow mark could end up being changed to a check. Otherwise, rounds will continue until you finish the final one. In our example case, we're told it will have at most 3 rounds. After that last round, a final pitch is made. Now, players can continue to discuss the case during this time, but then, when they're ready, one investigator is chosen to give the group's final answer for each of the categories. So they'll go through each of the categories in order and say out loud what they think the correct answers are. Remember, they do not have to understand the full context of the story. They just need to say the underlined words, either exactly or something that's close enough. But they can try to fill in the other details of the case and should be encouraged to do so. Either way, after hearing the final pitch, the lead investigator updates the guest tokens one last time and then scores the case. Each green check mark is worth 2 points, and each yellow token is worth 1. And if the players agree the final pitch was given with flair, the investigators get a bonus point. And with a total score of 10 or more points, you've achieved what's known as a true win. But the game can also end before the final round. At any time, and I mean this, at any time. If an investigator thinks they know the solution to the case, or if they just happen to say out loud what they believe the correct answer is, for each category, saying the answers in order, well, if they're right, the lead investigator stops the game, declares the case solved, and awards the players a perfect score of 12. And there's no limit to how many guesses players can make like this when playing, and they should be trying to solve the case as soon as they can. But to solve the case, remember, you have to say the correct answers, or near correct, in the same order as they're given by the categories. If you scored 11 or more points, you go through any of your uncollected allies and pick one of them with a symbol matching the character the lead investigator chose, and keep it as a permanent ally to be used in future cases when that related character is used again in any capacity, either as a regular investigator or lead investigator. If the players scored 7 or fewer points, they collect a random temporary ally from those they haven't collected so far, and then bookmark the next case with it. This ally will only be available during that case and is then returned to the deck after. Allies are meant to be used as a campaign reward if you choose to go through all the cases from the casebook in order, but you can still solve cases perfectly without them. They can certainly help though. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Here Lies. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime I post a new video. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can join the Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.